Welcome to Athletes to Entrepreneurs, the Alumni Journey. I'm Rob Finkelstein, founder and CEO of Alumni Direct, and we've created a platform for college alumni and Greek fraternities and business alumni and athletes to have a place where they can network and connect and utilize their affinity relationships. And this show, Athletes to Entrepreneurs, has been created to teach and inspire athletes that there is life after sports. And we're really excited today to have Bernard Robinson on with us. Bernard, how you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me on.
You're welcome. And Bernard was a college basketball player at Michigan. He then played in the NBA for both the Nets and Charlotte. And now his journey has taken to be a strategic consultant with ES&E, his company. And he's going to tell us all about that later on. But kind of want to start out. I always say it's fun. Is talk to me about growing up playing sports and how it shaped you, like going up, through youth sports and into high school, ultimately to college.
Absolutely. Well, I started off around 10 years old with the dream of making it to the NBA. I let my mother know at 10 years old, Mom, this is what I'm going to do. And, okay, boy, do what you do. I really found a passion, at that age. And it allowed me to stay out of the streets, really. I was the kid who, always went up to the, neighborhood basketball court or to some school or to another neighborhood, just to play the sport. And by the time I was 12, 13 years old, I was beginning to get recognized a lot. I had some success, playing for, my middle school, elementary school, et cetera, et cetera. People around the Washington, D.C. area started knowing a little bit about me, and it gave me the opportunity by the time I was 14, 15 years old to travel with one of the best AAU teams in the country at that time called DC Assault. And, from there, it just, took me into another world of being able to see this national scene of, the best players in the country and getting to know some of them guys and traveling. I think my first trip ever was to Atlanta, Georgia, to play against an AAU team called Atlanta Celtics. And it just went on from there. I wind up playing at Dunbar High School for most of my high school career. And wound up committing to the University of Michigan by my sophomore year in high school. So I thought that was always my dream school. Like I said, it was, for me, basketball was what took me away from the streets, and it's what allowed the streets to give me the respect, to give me the pathway to, getting better and better on the court, not putting any of those peer pressures of wanting to do things outside of basketball. Everybody in DC knew that I wanted to play basketball, and that's the type of respect they gave me as a kid. I feel like I'm, very fortunate for that. And that is what elevated me and grew my skills and, allowed me to learn and focus on, basketball and taking that path to get into the next level, which was college.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I think I hear that story a lot with different athletes that I've talked to. I think sports is great where it does, can get you away from, possibilities of getting into trouble in different aspects. And it's, I guess I've got to imagine, like you're saying, going to playgrounds. I mean, you probably practiced a ton, right? I mean, probably put a lot of hours into basketball growing up.
I mean, it was every day for me. It was rain, sleet, snow. I love the sport. So, literally rain, sleet, and snow. So it was every day for me. Yeah.
That's great. Yeah, this is my running joke now when I when I talk about my dream. You talked about dreaming to be an NBA player. I always say, I wanted to be a Major League Baseball player. Unfortunately, the talent wasn't there, so now I'm doing podcasts. So
well, all great. It's all great though. It's all great. The experience is what's most important. Me too. I'm doing something outside of sports as well, and that started 7, 8, 9 years ago. So sports doesn't last that long. Everybody.
Right. And that's a big part of the show. Like we'll talk about more about with the whole, transitioning out. So let's kind of go forward now. So once you're in college at Michigan, one of the things that I talk about a lot is when you were there, whether it's classes or programs for the athletes to kind of help them for their future. So looking at You were fortunate, the less than 1% that makes it to professional sports. But did they have any kind of classes that help guide athletes to like, hey, when you're done, here's some things you should do?
No, not at all. We had a student counselor, and we had an athletic student counselor. So if you were to go into the athletic office, you'd had somebody there that had those conversations with you, not in detail, but if you wanted to bring it up. And the same way with your student counselor, depending on the actual department that you majored in, it was someone there for you to talk about kind of your path after you graduated. It had nothing to do about sports.
Right.
I wouldn't necessarily say no. It was something dedicated to those student athletes who understood that the path might not be professional sports. Once they're done at school, that path was a lonely one.
Yeah.
For kids.
I mean, it's, I think most people you talk to will say that, I guess the colleges are, for the most part, are more, it's all about the sport. And obviously they want you playing that sport and that's why you're there. But I guess, in your opinion, do you think there are ways that maybe now, since you've gone through it all, both, collegiately and professionally, do you see areas that maybe schools can, potentially do a better job or at least offer things to athletes that might help them along the road as far as what they're going to do in the big picture?
Well, I mean, there's always better ways. The question always becomes, do the school want to? This issue has been around for, hundreds of years, to tell you the truth, since, universities and colleges have existed, and they still haven't put a path together for student athletes who are transitioning from college. So the question becomes, do they want to, more so if they want to? I think we already know that answer.
Right, right. And I think there's ways in that, we've talked about this, and I think, I talked about offline, but talking to other people that, yeah, maybe there's ways to kind of incentivize schools too, just that, hey, if they've got a better program and are looking at more at that holistic approach, that now all of a sudden, even from a recruiting standpoint, it might be that, parents are saying, oh wow, I want my kid to go to this school. And when they're picking from 4 or 5 schools and they know this one school is going to kind of take that care approach to, to their child, other than the sport, but looking out for them. And I know there's also, I'm sure, like there's certain coaches that, take an interest and help out. Uh,
Absolutely.
what a big topic right now is NIL, name, image, likeness.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure. I guess when you were in college, it wasn't there yet. So, kind of give me your thoughts on, you know, how it might have played out for you, but also what you see about it, the way it's going today, and the good, the bad.
Yeah, I think it's excellent for those student athletes. It obviously helps them understand the responsibility of money much early on. Negotiations, people approaching them on that level, getting that type of experience early on in college, I think would be ideal for any athlete who's transitioning to the professional level. So in that aspect, I think it's excellent for those guys. When I was there, obviously financially, it would have been a great gain for me, but I appreciated the authentic path that I took, and not having that opportunity to make any money and the types of things we did to get by in college. I am a guy in particular that appreciated that, but I would be lying if I was to say that I wouldn't have loved having some NIL money and being able to actually go do specific things, when it came to commercials, et cetera, et cetera. Because it definitely does help your mentality. I think that is the biggest thing for these kids, is putting them in that space, helping them understand, how people are approaching them early on, so that way they can learn from, certain aspects. They can kind of take their mind into that world and kind of adjust, learn, have money and grow from it, make your mistakes in college, et
Yeah.
cetera, et cetera.
No, I agree. And I think that's, like, I was talking to one guy, he's a former NFL player, and same thing. He played back in the day when it wasn't around, but his biggest concern was, I guess, from a like a financial literacy standpoint. And I always talk about this, that it's not just the athletes, it's anybody young. But I mean, all of a sudden, if you've got this windfall of money, realizing like, hey, you got to pay taxes, you got to do some of this other
Mm-hmm.
stuff. So,
Yeah.
one thing that you did mention that was interesting, and I heard this the other day. I was listening to a podcast, and I think it was a former NFL guy. his impression was, and give me your thoughts, is that he feels like it's great NIL, but that athletes, and you kind of touched on it a little bit before, that athletes were hungrier before when they didn't have this. And his opinion is now with NIL, they're not they're not as much hungry to get to that next level because they have this. I mean, do you see any truth in that?
Well, I can't put everybody in a fishbowl and say every athlete. This kid is definitely particular to the athlete, but yeah, you do have some incentives for athletes to not be as hungry to make it to the next level or to be a team player. Obviously, you get adjustment of attitudes. All that comes with having money. That's whether you're in college or as a
Yeah,
professional. At any time, those things happen. But like I said, I view it as an experience that these guys need to go through. So I look at it in a different lens than the previous guests. Whereas let them go through that in college.
yeah,
Let the kid who isn't getting that NIL money go through that experience, and what type of motivation does it bring to you? What is your mindset?
yeah,
You know, at that point in time. But yeah, that's obviously going to be an issue that you can't avoid. When it comes to some of these kids and getting the type of money. I'll use an example like University of Michigan, the university that I went to. I've got a kid, Hunter Dickinson, who's came back for his junior year. And one of the reasons why he came back the same way with Timmy at Gonzaga, the basketball player, one of the reasons why they came back was because they knew they would make more money in college than they would professionally. So
yeah,
they ride out that experience. They take that, and they'll probably both come back their senior years, and they'll ride out that experience before going to the professional level. Like I said, it gives the players an opportunity to make decisions that they wouldn't have to. So those are some of the pros
yeah.
to what NIL can do. Now, obviously, everything has a con that comes with it, but I think those pros outweigh the cons with the attitude adjustments. I think those are what the coaches are there for, and and that's now a big piece to what makes your team great as compared to good or bad.
Yeah.
How to handle that as a team, as an organization. You know.
Yeah, I mean, because I imagine if the example you just brought up, I mean, if they're going to stay, everybody was leaving early, but now all of a sudden, if there's an incentive to stay, then it does
Yeah.
help the team get better. That's great. One of the things that we're passionate about, Alumni Direct, is about just the alumni networking, connecting. So talk about, and I know it's probably changed, but maybe talk about the time when you were at Michigan. What kind of interaction did alumni have? And I'm not talking about like kind of the whole booster thing. I mean, you always hear stories about that, but and then now as an alumni, your experience too. So start out with like when you were there.
Yeah. So you had your alumni that you became familiar with, and you got to remember, University of Michigan is a football school.
Sure.
So, it wasn't like we had a great deal of alumni coming to us, speaking to us. We just didn't have that environment or that particular vibe to whereas, people from the past felt comfortable coming back, speaking to us, being a certain type of way. It just wasn't provided to us. And that's particular to University of Michigan. Now for football, that was a whole nother different thing, a whole nother different situation. Any alumni that wanted to be involved with me particular, it was always around that booster thing, and you had to be careful with that. Like I said, it was more tiptoeing around when it came to what alumni were, whether they were, authentic in their dealings with you or whether they were trying to be underhanded with you. You, as a student athlete, learned, let me stay, let me be particular about how I ask. So that interaction wasn't as seamless as it can be now. Now I think it's probably most likely a little bit more seamless, the interaction between alumni and the student athletes because of the presence of NIL and the ability to have those type of conversations and
Right.
deal with a kid can come in with the sports agent at the end of the day. He can a lot of times that's part of why kids sign. They have those conversations. Coaches are now, when they're recruiting, mentioning these things, bringing alumni with them. It's completely different game right now, when it comes to recruiting and everything.
Yeah, no, I could see that. So, like, I guess now looking back, or now, fast forward to current times, does Michigan reach out to you as an alumni athlete and ever, want you to come back and, talk to, some of the players, whether it's the basketball players or just any of the athletes at the school?
I just went back after 18 years
Wow.
3 weeks ago with Jawan Howard and them, and that coaching staff, and they just reached back out to me, and I went back like I said, it was 3 weeks ago, so that should give you your answer. And then not often do they, but like I said, it's extremely particular to the university or college that you go to. A college like University of North Carolina is known for reaching out to the athletes. Michigan State. Um, and I hope none of my Michigan alum is listening to this, but those colleges have always had those guys just hover around, their universities, and it was a little different for University of Michigan, but now you have people like Chris Webber that just came back 4 weeks ago. I was there 3 weeks ago. He came back 4 weeks ago. The first time he'd been back on campus, and he was there in 19. He left in 1992, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, that was a while ago. So that's good because I think obviously there's a lot of value in mentoring, that can happen by alumni coming back. I know that everybody talks about the golf tournaments and things, getting the team together. And I was surprised. There was one guy who was a former NFL player, and he wanted to go back to this school and talk to the current team, current football players, and the school almost kind of shunned it, which was, I mean, I don't understand, because you would think that they would want to have that interaction from the athlete.
Yeah, for me, I don't understand it either. But like I said, there has to be some particular type of reason. And like I said, um, I don't know if I should penalize the university. You are there for a specific reason. They're focused on that thing. They're not there to be built for these other outside things. So,
Right.
outside of me feeling like it's wrong and hey, let's find a way to change that, you can't be upset with the university, for, kind of their interactions with alumni,
Yeah, and I think it's the same story I hear, and you'll probably attest to this. I guess when you're playing, you're really not thinking about some of this stuff either. Because I was talking to one of the coaches, or it was an agent actually. He said that, I think I told you this, the best time, he said, to network and connect is obviously when you're playing, but the flip side is when you're playing, especially probably at a collegiate level, you're really not thinking about that.
Yeah, and that was some of the greatest advice that I recall Jalen Rose saying to us. It's like one of my last games there. Jalen Rose came to speak to us. I think we were playing in the NIT championship, et cetera, in Madison Square Garden. And he said, don't ever forget when you're at the University of Michigan, some of those students that you're going to class with, some of those professors that you're dealing with, these are your future and CEOs, and
Yeah.
their are CEOs and founders, and spark those conversations, have those conversations. That is a comment that really gave a lot of us a gift. So now you're right. When you are in that environment, you don't necessarily think of those things, despite people thinking that it's a natural thing to do. You don't think about those things. I call it being in the clouds. You're in the clouds, and everybody knows you. You feel like you're the man. Everybody's talking about the next game. And that's just the life you're in. If you don't take the time out to focus on those specific things and create your own strategy while in college, it'll be difficult for you, especially coming from an environment whether it be in a city or some rural skirt of Oklahoma, coming into a college setting. You're not trained to think about those things. There's no class to harp on that,
Right.
like basketball.
Yeah, and it's interesting to say that, because some of the things that we're talking about doing is, and I guess honestly probably starts at the high school level, but to kind of bring in a group of people that are different types of resources, whether it's like in your line of work, like strategic counselors, or whether it's transition coaches or mental health practitioners, but bring them in, maybe again even at a high school level, to talk to the athletes. And it has to, I guess, be more of an ongoing thing, because I guess anybody can have one class on it, but are you really gonna, how much are you gonna listen to? You might be present at the time, but then you kind of forget. So it almost needs to be some kind of curriculum that's within that, the high school side or even the college side athletics, to give the athletes a chance to see all these other aspects, and kind of help guide them through it.
Absolutely. And that is, and we were just having a conversation, and that trickles back down to the university, the high school, or the college wanting that, allowing you to provide
Right.
some type curriculum and that time with the kids. And so it's not even linked to the kids anymore. It's right back to that,
Yeah.
to the platform who's offering that and how interested they are.
Right.
For me, that's the ticket, the incentive that you need to find, that we all need to find a way to provide to these entities to allow us a time with the kids, because it's exactly what you said. It's more than a conversation. It's a practice that needs to be had. It needs to be done. And what is the format in which you allow me to do this practice for them?
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. So, we talked in the beginning, I said about, talking about athlete transition. So you've gone through it twice, obviously. So maybe if you can take us through transitioning from out of the collegiate sport into professional sport, and then the next level after that, going professional into the real world, so to speak.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So very, very interesting time. I actually, once I finished my last game, I didn't complete my last 12 credits. I had to come back to school for that later on. But I immediately left college and started working out, training. And that was what was promoted to me from the sports agent that I had, the new sports agent that I got. And so I went on that path, and it was extremely difficult, nerve wracking. Your mentality already is, formulating, at that moment of, fear mixed with excitement, and nervousness, all throughout that workout process with teams. I probably worked out for about 25 teams, almost the entire NBA. So it was extremely, draining for me in that process. And then was fortunate enough to get drafted in the second round, 45th pick overall, if I'm not mistaken. And, for me, it, completed a dream.
Yeah.
But going through that process, it helped me understand like it's just the beginning. And that was a learning experience for me right there. Being a second round pick is essentially the same as saying you got to come in and perform. This isn't some relaxed situation. The thing that you dream of.
Yeah.
First round relaxed situation, guaranteed 4 years, et cetera, went out the window for me. So the focus began right away for me. The nervousness, understanding the politics, dealing with that, going into a new team. Charlotte was an expansion team at that time. And so having to fight for that, ability to get on the court and play, achieving that, going through 4 different contracts while in the NBA each year. I had a new contract until my last contract, which was a 2-year deal. So all of these things play on you, and it becomes much deeper than the basketball, than the game of sports. I was fortunate enough to my rookie year, get linked with a mentor. And let me tell you the story about how that happened. So my mentor, Lee Ratliff, who's still in Charlotte, North Carolina at this time, was security on our team. And so we went to training camp in Wilmington, North Carolina, and a lot of the players wanted to go to this jewelry shop that was kind of known in Wilmington. So everybody wanted to go, and we all set up to go. And Lee Ratliff, this team security, is like, man, I want to go. I want to go. And the whole team is like, man, we don't want you to go. You security, you're going to tell her we don't want you to go. So I always felt like I was just always one of them inclusive type of guys. And so I'm like, come on, Lee, you can go with me. Well, come to find out, Lee Ratliff was a millionaire. The reason why he was working as team security was because he had a security business. He wanted his security business to securitize the arena.
Yeah.
So he put a strategic move to work for the team. And he was like, B, if I don't get that contract, I'm quitting. I don't need this. I don't ever spend this money that they give me, et cetera, et cetera. I got a lot more to do than this. And so he wound up teaching me, life after sports, the stock campaigns, political campaigns. He wound up teaching me how to be an entrepreneur. And this was from my rookie year. Wow. So I was fortunate because I did not have that mindset at all. But he taught me how to set things up, how to invest, how important it is to be what we call an insider, not an outsider. So an owner is an insider.
Right.
An outsider would be somebody like who owns the stock. Well, I don't know what's going on with the stock, but I just own a share of it. But if the stock fall, I fall. That's to us an outsider. So he taught me all these different procedures and techniques within life and business that it changed my mindset. So by the time I had wound up, my last 4 years was overseas. By the time I was in my last year overseas, I already had a business that was generating income in America. and had already had a specific type of mindset when it comes to transition, had already pieced something together when it comes to how I would transition, how I would get other people involved with me, et cetera, et cetera. So I was fortunate enough to do that. But this is a skill set that a lot of people need to learn.
Right.
And like I said, it's a hand-on approach. It's a practice that needs to be had. It's not a conversation that you have, which a lot of that tends to happen in sports, where people have a conversation and then y'all move on. Y'all go y'all separate ways, whether it be in the format of, this meeting, some big auditorium, a one-on-one conversation. It's just it's a conversation. It needs to be a practice, that happens, and the many different ways in which, you can create a practice is what I feel like needs to be talked about when it comes to athletes, student athletes, professional athletes, any athlete, because like I said, their mindset is not focused on life after sports, no matter what they tell you. Sure. And it's because, especially as a professional athlete, you're thinking about the competition that's at hand. You're thinking about surviving.
Right.
You notice the difference between a LeBron James and the 14th player on the bench. LeBron James has the ability to think outside of it and have time dedicated to outside, avenues that he's seeking, as compared to the last guy on that bench who's completely focused on making it to the next contract, right, finding a way on the court. In these things, it's extremely difficult. You got the greatest athletes in the world you're going up against. You don't have time to focus on these other things unless you develop a specific type of strategy to do that. And that's what I learned. And that kind of, I guess you'll transition into kind of my life.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I think, your example, what you should do. You had a mentor, and I think a lot of people don't realize that. And you do bring up a good point, just, being that last guy on the bench. I mean, really, if you look at any sport, I guess, for example, if you're a minor league baseball player, unless you're a superstar, it's the same thing. You're fighting for your sports life. And I guess, and obviously there's off seasons, and I don't, a lot of players, I mean, they might have to, I guess, depending on where you're at, you might have to get a job, might not have to get a job, but I guess it's your point of having that mentor was great. And I think that's something that other people should look at. So even though you've already kind of given some advice, give some advice to athletes. And again, we could do two-prong. If I guess it's harder for you because you were fortunate to get to professional, but like maybe advice to the athlete coming out of college, it's not going to be professional. And then maybe the advice to the professional athlete of, okay, you're done now with the sport. You had a great time just like you did, but like now it's time to transition into something and, create a successful story for yourself.
Right. I mean, look at the profile and how you created yourself as an athlete. And ask yourself, are you those same things outside of being an athlete? Who are you in a networking space? Who are you when you're speaking one-on-one to an individual? Who are you when you're trying to deliver or pitch a specific service or yourself as a brand? Who are you in these spaces? Check yourselves there. That's something that I could tell anybody, whether you're an athlete or not. So definitely student athletes transitioning out. You become great when you transform yourself and you put on a performance, so you understand that in sports. But who are you when you leave sports? Really define those things, really shore up those skills. I talked to you already about it, but,
right,
your mindset, and really diving down what your mindset is, the type of vision that you need to have. Can you visualize, who you are at the pinnacle of your success? Have you ever done that? How can you go after something and not visualize that? In sports, you do. Because the end result is that championship, and you dream about that. You think about that. That end result is an all-star game.
right.
So you work towards trying to be that, et cetera, et cetera. And then obviously, your approach. Who are you around other individuals? For me, that's called an approach, and really becoming something of value for the people around you is what pushes you to that next level as well. You have other people who appreciate you as much as you appreciate yourself. All of a sudden you get that boost. And so that's extremely important. Think about professional athletes whose transitions to maybe commentating or to think other things, sports analysts outside of sports. And it was because of their approach, who they were to other people around them.
Right.
That got that opportunity. So it's extremely important to be that. And in the last, like I said, the last thing is your mouthpiece. Who are you when you speak to, you, Rob, as compared to you speak to your teammates? Do you shell up when you're speaking to, Rob, when you're speaking to or are you the same type of person that you are like when you were on that court? That's extremely important when it comes to taking yourself to the next level to other people.
Right.
The recipe of success has always been help, has always been that. You need that to be able to elevate yourself, to scale up. And so you have to put on performances as you move on. You cannot just only put a performance on a court, and then when you get off the court, you no longer think about those things. It's the same qualities that you need to use that make you successful in sports that you need to take into, the real world.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I think that's, you talk to a lot of people and you talk to companies and people that want to, you always hear about sales and stuff and hiring athletes. It's just, you're right. If you take that same mentality that you as a leader and the drive and the determination, and everything else into your next chapter, that's a great way to go. So let's fast forward now. I talked about in the beginning, and now we get to do that Bernard commercial, because I mean I'm jacked up. I'm ready to go. you got to hire Bernard's company, man. He's the real deal. He can definitely help athletes. But talk about what you're doing today and how people can find you.
Yeah, I'm a strategic consultant. I have a group of strategic partners with me that are all experienced in their own space, whether it be from politics to, lobbying, to logistics, sports and entertainment, obviously. And we help entities become efficient at whatever they are trying to achieve. Notice the word is efficient. We don't go out there and achieve your goal for it. We help you get better at what you are trying to achieve, by creating pure methods and game plans for you. So we're extremely custom. We work with you. We don't have no cutoff time, like I told you. It's about a practice. It's not about a conversation. So we're much different than, let's just say, a PR firm when it comes to that. And so that's our goal every day. That's what we do. And obviously helping, athletes transition is one of my number one goals. They need it. And the commitment is always on you. The same way you got great at playing your sport and that commitment that you took, we ask you to take those things into kind of what makes you successful, or at least more efficient at the goals you're trying to seek. And yeah, so that's what I do every day.
That's great. And I guess it's something that definitely needs to be replicated, because there's
let me say this, and
yeah.
You can find me at www, .es&e.info is where you can find out a little bit about more what we do. Reach out to me. I'm always available to have a conversation with anybody. I'm extremely passionate and committed to truly helping people become more efficient at what they're going after. And we do it in a multitude of ways, whether it be through sessions that are more therapeutic, game plans. We get you strategize, is what I call it, when it comes to certain things you walk into, like a networking event. We'll put strategy around that event and create goals for you, and anything else, a meeting, an interview. And then, like I said, the sessions that, we ask you to commit to is to make you more better, to take you down that line, to open you up, to build comfort and confidence. So www.es&e.info is where you can reach out, look up, and find us at.
Okay, great. Now, are you on like LinkedIn, Facebook, and
Twitter? I am on LinkedIn. You can just find me, my name, Bernard Robinson. Instagram, Exigency Sports, which is spelled EXIGENCY, Sports and Entertainment. That's where you can find my company page at. I'm also on Facebook, the same thing, or you can just find me and my name. My Facebook is facebook.com/BDREALIST, BD Realist. And yeah, I have a Twitter page, but I'm not necessarily, on the Twitter.
It's hard. I mean, I'm on Twitter on a lot of, for different stories and stuff like that, but we'll put all that stuff in the show notes as well. I mean, it was great speaking with you, and really appreciate it. You can find Alumni Direct on alumnidirect.com. We can also go to LinkedIn and Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all those, and follow the show. I think this was a great show, and we want to continue to have athletes like Bernard on here, just to again make an impact. We truly want to make an impact, myself as well as the company, in helping athletes in the difficult times of transition out after sports. So again, thank you so much. We appreciate it, Bernard.
Thank you, man. I appreciate you allowing me to come on your platform and speak. It was an honor. You're a great person. I've heard you speak and talk about what you're trying to achieve. I know you'll get it done. And so I'm looking forward to seeing, more from you and your guys as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. Looking forward to working together with you. Thanks.